So, Ali, Swalwell had been facing an expulsion vote. Now that he plans to resign, what impact does this have?
Well, the political impact, Chris, is negligible, given the fact that Swalwell and Gonzalez will likely resign around the same time. We're waiting to see when they actually submit their resignations to the House floor, because that's when it becomes official. But from an accountability perspective, and we've heard the survivors of Swalwell's allegations say this, that this feels like the first step toward accountability. And I think the next question becomes, do any of the district attorneys in Manhattan or back in California feel that they have enough to actually end up prosecuting Swalwell on any of these allegations, especially the ones that are a bit more recent? Those could be in some ways easier for them to find legal accountability on. But I think if we focus on the congressional impact for a moment, this is also a rare moment where we see Leader Hakeem Jeffries on the Democratic side and House Speaker Mike Johnson in agreement over where things landed. Listen to the conversation that they just had with one of our colleagues in the hall here.
Mr. Speaker, can we get your reaction to the decision by Gonzalez and Swalwell to resign? Do you believe they made the right decision?
I do. I mean, my views have been made known about the terrible allegations that were made, and obviously the facts that they both admitted to, and I think it was the appropriate thing.
Leader Jeffries, do you believe that Congressman Swalwell and Congressman Gonzalez made the right decision in resigning?
Yes.
The appropriate thing, and a quick yup from Jeffries. I think that is a widely shared opinion here in the halls of Congress, Chris.
So, Congresswoman, you revealed your own experiences with sexual assault, sexual harassment on Capitol Hill. I think it was nearly a decade ago. And you have worked to make it easier and safer for women to report bad actors. So I wonder what's gone through your mind over the last 24 hours or so, and do you feel like your efforts have been successful?
Chris, I'm really heartbroken by the fact that these women didn't feel that they could come forward in the system that we created that protected them. The original law was always tilted in favor of the perpetrator. There was mandatory cooling off periods. There was counseling required of the accuser. There was non-disclosure agreements. And when the settlement was made, it was the taxpayers that were picking up the tab. So Congressman Bradley Byrne, a conservative Republican from Alabama, and I joined forces and created this new construct where the victim was represented by counsel that the Congress would pay for, that they weren't subject to mediation or non-disclosure agreements. It was only if they wanted that. And the settlement would be paid for by the member, either by paying it up front or by having their wages garnished or their thrift savings plan or even their Social Security. So we tried to create an environment where they would feel safe to report. Now, the fact that these women did not is really troubling to me. And I really call on my former colleagues in Congress to do a deep dive on this issue and find out why they didn't report. Is it because they're concerned about retaliation? Is it because they thought they would be somehow doxxed in some way? We've got to make sure we fix this because it's a very predatory environment in Congress. I hate to say that, but it's true. These men get empowered, they become entitled, and they become have a sense of untouchability. And in the case of Congressman Swalwell, there was plenty of rumors moving around, circling about his behavior, but everyone looks the other way. Even with Tony Gonzalez, the fact that they were going to allow him to stay in Congress and finish his term after he conducted himself in a manner and had an affair with one of his staffers who then committed suicide. Why would we allow him to do that? In the private sector, when something like this comes up, the CEO is fired immediately.
And I think exactly to that point, Ali, there's an opinion piece by Michelle Cottle in the New York Times today that describes this culture of what they call turning a blind eye in Washington. She says it's deeply corrosive, and she says, Me Too notwithstanding, too many in the congressional ecosystem continue to keep the chamber's secrets under wraps until doing so becomes impossible and a political liability. Is that what you've seen and heard, Ali?
I think the Congresswoman is right about the pervasiveness of this atmosphere in Congress. And I will say, for women broadly who are watching, it's not just in Congress where other women try to protect each other by saying quietly, hey, don't go for drinks with that person. Don't get in the elevator with that person. They are known to hit on women, harass women, do worse to women. I think that that is pervasive in the culture up here, and we've seen it. At the same time, I am a bit troubled by the narrative that has popped up online about the idea that everyone knew about Swalwell. Certainly, I've not spoken to anyone that knew about the extent and seriousness and gravity of these sexual assault allegations. That is serious. As a reporter, if I had heard about that, I would have tried to unpack it immediately. I do think that Congresswoman Speier is right, that there are rumors about the kinds of members who are willing to be active outside of their marriage, the kind who are willing to go drinking with staff who are much younger than them, where the power imbalance is immense. I think that that is very much part of the culture here. And I don't think it's just isolated to Congress. And that's why I think if we broaden this out to a post-Me Too environment, Me Too was an important moment for accountability, but it was a fleeting Band-Aid. I think that that is one of the conclusions that you can draw in the immediate aftermath of what's happening here in this new reckoning on Capitol Hill. I think I'll also say it is hard, and the bravery that it takes for these women who have come forward, whether they are sharing their names or not, it is bravery that is putting them out there to share something that happened in some cases where their bodies were violated, but certainly their sense of security was violated in the workplace. That takes bravery and courage. I commend them immensely. At the same time, as someone who has heard rumors about other members and tried to do reporting on that, it's hard to get people to feel comfortable and safe enough to go forward with a story like that. And I think that as we reckon with what did people know, when did they know it, that's an important line of questioning. At the same time, though, you cannot do these stories without women who feel that they are safe enough to come forward. And I think that's why the system that Congresswoman Speier set up is so important. And yet it's also where it falls short, because what has history told us? That when women come forward, they are not always believed. I think it's important to note that in this instance, there's no lag time between these allegations coming forward and people saying, I believe these women, we need to do something about it.
So, Duncan, the Manhattan District Attorney is already investigating these claims that Swalwell sexually assaulted one of his staffers in a New York City hotel room. The FBI is also asking Swalwell to sit down for an interview. There is Alameda County, which is also looking into the possibility of it. What do they have to see here to move forward?
Yeah, because there's a lot swirling around. And remember, there are all these different lanes. I mean, what we're hearing about a lot today is the political lane, and that happens really quickly. Public accountability, a resignation. But speaking from the perspective of a criminal lawyer, these charges don't, if there are any charges to be brought, they don't get extinguished upon a resignation. This could be the beginning of legal problems for Eric Swalwell. And what they're looking at really is to make a criminal case, what is the evidence here? And it's going to go a lot slower. What is the evidence? What is the jurisdiction? Is there a crime that happened inside a particular jurisdiction? And then they're probably looking a lot more closely about these issues of consent, because a lot of it, we don't really know the details of who knew what and who saw what and what all the evidence is. The devil will be in the details. And so,
do those details include a lot of now, which may be different from pre-Me Too movement? Text messages, photos that get sent, even if then they're disappeared. People could have taken a picture of them. And contemporaneous to the allegation, telling someone you know or someone's you know.
Of course, because, one of the issues of consent is whether somebody was too incapacitated. That's a statutory definition, right? So New York, for example, where the Manhattan DA's office is looking into it, might look at whether somebody was was statutorily incapacitated and they couldn't actually understand what was happening to them. Well, it's very narrowly drawn under New York law. Getting drunk is not statutorily incapacitated, but if somebody gives you a roofie or makes you incapacitated without your consent, that might. And so a lot of proving that as a prosecutor might come down to whether someone was able to send text messages, whether someone was able to have conversations, whether there were cameras present. And so this is going to be a lot slower. We're seeing all of this happen very quickly in the political lane. I think we're going to see this unfold much more slowly in the criminal lane as a legal matter over the next coming months.
Okay, months. So, Congresswoman, there is reporting that within the walls of Capitol Hill, there were whispers. You mentioned that. whispers are one thing, right? But actually knowing something is another. But even with whispers, and some people would say where there's smoke, there's fire, and that may not be fair to the person who is the target of an accusation, but there's a question that's been raised about whether there was no one in the Democratic power structure to at least push pause on having Swalwell get into a high-profile governor's race. Is there something more outside of the law that you talked about in Congress that can help change the culture or at least change the reporting?
So I think there's a couple of things that can take place. We've got to clarify that sexual harassment means that you cannot have a sexual relationship with someone in your office. That is not necessarily absolutely clear. Secondly, and we saw that oftentimes in college settings or in the military, where if there was a private place where someone could put the information about their sexual assault or harassment, and if they see that that person having done that to another person, they have greater strength, because it's the numbers that helps them come forward. When they know that it wasn't just them, it was someone else, that can give them the ability to speak up. So that technology exists today. It exists on college campuses. We had it in the military as well. The one thing that hasn't been pointed out that goes on as well is, and I met with many third house women, these are lobbyists, who were also being sexually harassed by members. And there's really no place for them to go to speak up about it either. So there's more work that needs to be done, and I hope my colleagues will take it seriously and improve the rules.